me to do the...
That's okay, I don't know. So I was given the title, Can Apps Really Help Us Get More Healthy? And I guess what I didn't want to do is just kind of do a boring meta-analysis because, or present a series of meta-analyses, because they don't really tell you anything. When you kind of synthesize lots and lots of data, unless you get kind of really fine-grained in picking apart what's in each app, it's really hard to get a big picture. So what instead I wanted to talk to you about is kind of the promise of mobile sensing and kind of some about the science of behaviour change, because everywhere I go at the moment people are talking about behaviour change. It seems quite odd to me. I was in a room full of Leeds University's got this big theme called Energy at Leeds, and they want to do loads of stuff about energy and want to turn the city into a living laboratory, all stuff like that. And you had people from Arup there saying that they were experts in behaviour change. What they meant was that they were experts at getting government to do what their clients wanted them to do. I don't do that. I'm more interested in individual level behaviour change. And being a health psychologist, I've got kind of lots of models at my disposal that kind of are meant to explain how people change their behaviour. And health psychologists have been doing that kind of this kind of work for forever, like mid-70s, let's say. And I guess when I was doing my my PhD, it still felt like nobody cared what health psychologists said. And I think it's because our models are pretty impenetrable. And oftentimes what we would do is we would produce these kind of correlational studies which we would pretend we knew about behaviour change, but really what we were doing was trying to predict what had happened already kind of retrospectively. And from that, some quite good storytellers managed to kind of tell the story to funders that health psychologists were experts in behaviour change, and bizarrely they started to believe us. And so my PhD supervisor ended up running a sexual health intervention in the west of Scotland, cost £1.2 million. And what they came up with, it was that the comparison group was what normally happens, a teacher talking to kids about their kind of sexual behaviours, particularly around kind of initiating condom use. As you can imagine, you've all been at school, those don't really work. And then he did this kind of theory-based thing, but what he actually came up with was two very polite and extraordinarily middle-class children sitting in this lovely kind of granite-topped kitchen saying things like, "Oh, do you think we should have sex next weekend? Yes, I think we should. Should we go down to the clinic?" And then they totter off down to the clinic. But he showed it to presented this as professorial lecture, and we're like, doesn't sex in Scotland happen with buckfast in fields? So, anyway, I guess the thing that what I should say is, these kind of things, these determinants of behaviour can be really important, and kind of broadly, almost all the psychological models of behaviour change say, intention, how much you like a thing that you're going to do, how much you feel able to do it, how much you kind of want to do it, is important, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. And to bridge the gap between intentions and behaviour, you need some kind of plan, either a plan to get started, a plan to keep going, or a plan to manage it when you have a relapse. But the problem with these kind of models is they might tell you that's the psychological thing that's important. What it doesn't tell you is how to change that thing. And that's where those things fall down, and that's why you end up with middle-aged psychologists producing videos of children discussing walking to a phone box and ringing up for some condoms. So a lot of us who've been doing this a while start to think, actually, do you know what, we need to take our focus away from proving our psychological models work and start working out something that could be useful to practitioners, because it's practitioners that do the everyday work of kind of helping people change their behaviour. And so this is a thing that's really taken off. If you Google the behaviour change wheel, you can find this. It's like a little thing that you can cut out and make into an actual wheel. And kind of what it asks you is, okay, where's the problem in the behaviour change? Why isn't this behaviour changing? Is it about motivation? Is it about capacity? Is it about opportunity? If it's about, say, for example, opportunity, what is it? Is it about lack of social support? Is it about lack of kind of physical opportunity? That being the case, what are the things that we can do? What are the actions that we can put in place? It might be about coercion, it might be training, it might be enablement, and then what are the ways we can make those things happen. So that's the thing that's kind of taking off. It gives you kind of more of a focus on what you might want to target if you want to bring about behaviour change. And then usually, I know Victoria's a bit of a fan of this. What they've done is they've come up with a bunch of international experts, hundreds of people have come together, and they've looked at all the different ways we can change behaviour, and we are mapping those onto those things. So when you go, do you know what, I've got a problem here, there's a lack of education, and we need to put something in place to, to bring about change. You look it up in your little behaviour change app, and I'd encourage you to download this. So it's the BCT taxonomy app. It's available for Android and for Apple. And it lets you look at a bunch of categories of things you might want to do, and it explains what the practical thing is. So for example, goal setting. Say you've got somebody who really wants to lose weight, and that's really what they want to do. And we know practically the only way to manage that is around energy balance. So that's going to have to require some goal setting about energy intake. You can wish all you like that you might lose weight, but until you actually set some goals around your calorie intake or your calorie expenditure, nothing's going to happen. And that's what this does. So this is kind of like a cookbook for people who want to create behaviour change. So that gives you some background on where behaviour change is in the academic community. Why are apps potentially useful? Well, I think a key thing is that phones have changed. We've all had, those of us that are old enough to have had them, we've all had those kind of Nokia candy bars, and I remember friends of mine kind of getting, I don't know what the name of those sort of phones that were before smartphones were, feature phones. They'd have like batteries and stuff, and I could never get excited about them. It seemed like spending £500 for something that would never get used. And I always said, I'll be interested in mobile phones when essentially it's a computer in my pocket, and lo and behold, they're more than a computer in our pocket now. Got a little bit of a problem that there's a bit of a kind of gap between the people who want to bring about behaviour change and that kind of technology that's required to kind of employ it in an app. And oftentimes you need a developer, and it can be quite tricky to bridge the gap. But the good news is that some developers out there have produced middleware which lets you kind of play around with what the phone can do and produce prototypes. And what I want to sort of point out today is that anybody with a bit of imagination can start exploiting this technology and start trying this stuff out for themselves. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the sensors that are in your phone, how you can apply those sensors to detecting behaviour and encouraging behaviour, the different ways that you can prompt people, and the direction that things are going. So this really is a kind of an encouragement to you guys to think about what could you actually do. A little bit of background, you'll know all this stuff. Smartphone penetration is going up and up and up, and data usage is going up and up and up, and kind of that's just going on over time. We're just seeing it across the board. So once upon a time, people would say to us when we want to do some kind of M-health intervention, they would say, "Oh, aren't you potentially increasing inequality?" I mean, my experience is much of what we do increases inequality, particularly if it focuses on motivation. But I'm not more concerned about M-health than I am about other intervention types. So, what's in your phone? You guys might know this stuff already, but you've at least got a light sensor, proximity sensor, cameras, GPS, accelerometry, dual microphones, compass and gyroscope in your phone. And these are old Android screenshots that I took a while ago, but it kind of, if any of you in the room's got Android, oftentimes I go places, I'm the only person with Android, lots of people seem to have Apple. I'm sure you can do this all on Apple, I don't know. Android sensor lets you look at all your sensor data, and it gives you a sense of all the data that's spewing out your phone all the time.
Can you say what, unless you're going to say what a gyroscope is, and just explain those different, just in case people don't know them, if you go back one. Sure. You might have lost a few people.
Sorry about that. So let me tell you a story, right? So I think I knocked this up a couple of years before the Snowden stuff came out, and what I used to say to my students was, imagine I'm your dodgy boyfriend, and I've got access to this particular middleware called Tasker. You can download it for next to nothing on Google Play Store. I can know where you are through your GPS signal. Even if you turn your GPS, I can know through your cell tower location. I can turn your microphone on and off remotely. I can turn your video camera on and off remotely. I can dump all that data in a shared network file and upload all hidden from you that it's happening. I can get co-location data, so if somebody else is on the same social network as you, I can know who you're with. I can scan your, I can tell whether you're in the dark. I don't know how to do this from accelerometry data, but my old colleagues at Cambridge are getting to the point where they can take that triaxial accelerometry data, so acceleration in 3 axes, and work out what it is you're doing. So they know you're in a dark room upstairs from your barometric altimeter and the lights are off. You can start to tell the story. And the crazy stuff is that there are apps out there that you can get people to install, and then you can essentially take all their data. The stuff that kind of people like Men with Hill are doing, you can do too, as long as you can trick someone into uploading into loading your program. So that's all your sensor data, it's all sort of flying around there. Gyroscope is kind of how it's orientated. Have you taken the phone out of your pocket and put it down? That's the kind of thing it can tell. So yeah, you've got that sensor data. You know whether a phone's plugged in or not. You know phone call activity. All this stuff is stuff that the phone will happily give out to other people. You can read people's SMS. If you've got the right emailing client, you can read people's emails in real time. You know what Wi-Fi connection people are connected to. And obviously, when Google went round with their cars and sort of stripped all that Wi-Fi data and Germany got very angry about it, that's how Google knows where you are when your GPS is off. They mapped all the Wi-Fi SSIDs. Application activity, calendar activity, I can know what you've put in your calendar. Does anybody here use NFC to pay for things?
Well, yeah, on the cloud.
Yeah, so you can read NFC activity. So this is all the kind of data that when people say, oh, the government's spying on you, it's kind of, this is the stuff they can get. But it's stuff that you will have all given away. So for example, when you installed like Facebook Messenger, look at all the things that you gave permissions for. I'm not trying to scare you about this, some of those things are quite innocuous, but for example, when you give access to your camera, potentially that means that the developer can turn the camera on and off at will. I know when I ask for permission for one of my apps, it just says the same thing as everything else says, that essentially that I've got access to the camera. What that means is remotely I can control someone's camera. Anyway, enough of the scary stuff.
We had a session on that with Jeremy Wyatt a while ago.
Yeah.
He freaked us all out.
Yeah. It is what it is. I think we're all spewing out so much data. Unless you're doing something really, really interesting, nobody cares. You're just noise. Unfortunately, no one seems to be doing a lot with this. But what you can do, and various people have done, you can detect physical activity. Those of you that use Runkeeper, Strava, Map My Ride, you know this. You can kind of detect physical activity. Things like Noom will collect, essentially turn your phone into a pedometer and give you a daily step count. Colleagues in Southampton are putting fall apps on phones, so vulnerable users can have an alert. So when the phone detects a fall, it automatically calls a support worker. You can leave your phone beside your bed and have your phone detect whether you're having episodes of sleep apnea, and obviously sleep apnea is really important for memory. You can get apps to detect tinnitus. Colleagues in Cambridge are doing a thing called Emotion Sense, and what they're doing is they are, I don't want to use the word surreptitiously, it kind of feels surreptitiously, in background they're turning on and off your microphone. And they've come up with an algorithm that they've validated that can detect stress in speech. Now, potential applications for that might be, for example, with clinicians. So you've got a phone in a clinician's pocket. You might notice when a clinician's becoming more stressed. That might be a marker from where they're becoming less patient-centered. You can get physical activity and intensity, and as I mentioned, you can get co-presence and emotion. So you've got all this stuff that you can detect. But the big thing that seems to me that's kind of a real driver for potential behaviour change is that phones can detect context. They know where you are, and that means that they can detect opportunities to act and opportunities to intervene. So, for example, here's an example from the States. we know broadly where sexual activity takes place. There's lots of papers out there mapping sexual activity and risky sexual activity. There's also papers out there mapping kind of STD transmission rates. Now, it might be that what you'll find is that there are patterns in risky sexual activity that can be detected. And it might be that you can use your phone or use an app to promote, say, condom use, for example. So as somebody's coming into actually, pause there. Someone's pointed out to me a really useful insight. By the time you're tempted, it's too late. Now, because by the time you're tempted, you're just going to give into it. What these kind of context-aware mobile phones let you do is identify before somebody comes into a tempting context and bolster their motivation or prompt them to follow through on a plan before they're in that tempting context. So, for example, in the States, it's easy to cue people to the location of their nearest condom provider, for example. A study that's going on in Cambridge at the moment is a smoking cessation support app. And when you start using it, you don't immediately try and quit. You spend some time just tapping a wearable saying when you've kind of given in to smoking and when you've been tempted. And what happens is the phone learns the context in which you're tempted, in which you'll fail, and then use that sensor data to bolster your motivation as you're coming into those contexts. So I think I've mentioned some of these. There's a load of work going on at the moment, kind of mapping fast food outlets. How can you, when people are likely to be hungry, prompt them to go to healthy food providers? This is one we're doing at the moment, traffic density and RTA. I won't say any more about that because I'm going to show you a little video in a moment. So you've got all these behaviours and you've got all these contexts that you can potentially detect. What can you do with the phone? Well, you can notify people, and those notifications can represent kind of reminders, they can represent kind of motivational boosts, they can be persuasive. There's lots of things you can do, and these are the different ways you can do it. I'm sorry it's slipping off here. But it's really easy to provide kind of a notification bar alert, a kind of pop-up alert. You can draw things on a widget. So I'm going to just show you some examples in a home screen. This is one from University of Wisconsin, and this represents kind of the background of your phone. So like the background image can be dynamic. And the idea is it's meant to represent kind of a glanceable guide as to when it's okay to perform certain behaviours if you want a good night's sleep. So they're saying that there's particular times that it's okay to drink, it's okay to be in bed, it's okay to do physical activity and eat junk food and so on. And that's the idea, that it sort of almost kind of works at an unconscious level. It's meant to just influence you about when it's okay to do certain behaviours. And obviously you can provide kind of musical alerts. I'm not going to show you any of that. This is something I built for as a kind of a reminder tool. So this is again using this, there's a piece of software out there called Tasker, which is really good for kind of bodging together prototypes of interventions. So this is just a context-aware cue for me to kind of work hard. Essentially, as I turned up at work, it changed this little thing on my home screen to say work hard. And then as I got to the end, so that was kind of location-aware. It did some data logging, which isn't very interesting. And then as I came to the kind of period of time when it'd be time for me to go home, I was training for a bike race then, and it'd be very tempting to take the 11k route home rather than the 42k route home. So my phone changed to Be Strong as it came close to time. Some of you might have heard of the quantified self movement. So this is this idea that like if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, and we should all be capturing all this data about ourselves. And you get apps like Jawbone. Anybody here got a Jawbone? doesn't it? It's got a nice glossy advert. I guess I'm a little bit sceptical about this. I find kind of self-monitoring not very compelling. Like, after a while, it's not very exciting to know how many steps a day I've had, and after a while, it becomes quite depressing to know that I'm getting less than 6 hours a night's sleep. So I think you need to do more than that, but it's it's interesting that all these device companies are really on board with that, and the kind of the paramilitary wing of that movement is the Zephyr Bio harness. So I don't follow NFL, but apparently if you do follow NFL, you can real-time track National Football League. There you go.
American football.
Okay.
During the draft, is that something you would have heard of? The draft, you can track prospective kind of new footballers' kind of bio signals. So all this kind of exciting stuff in real time. Apparently, the American Army have invested heavily in this technology, so they can real time track the bio signals of their troops. On a more pound shop level, there's things like Arduino. So you can build your own sensors very cheaply. With those of you who did electronics at school remember breadboard. Arduino looks like breadboard, and you can build your own pulse sensors. And then kind of moving forward, some of what I've talked to you about like this idea of telegraph processing, kind of knowing where people are, knowing, gathering their data, adding that to the cloud, and kind of knowing what the whole picture of activity is with real-time GIS. The easiest way to see what that means in real terms.
Instead of having to sift through and organize all the information you need throughout your day, all that information is ready at the exact moment you actually need it. Introducing Google Now. Now with Android, one simple swipe gives you the information that is relevant to you, right now. As you leave your house, Google Now is smart enough to check current traffic conditions and has prepared an alternate route for your commute. Google Now is always one step ahead, so you can feel more confident as you navigate your day. When you're at a subway station, Google Now can tell you what trains are next, find you interesting local places to eat. Is there a good Japanese noodle bar nearby? And when you're in a restaurant, your phone already has the best dishes listed for you. Google Now automatically keeps you updated on your favorite sports teams in real time, just in case you were curious about that no-hitter. With the predictive power of Now, you get just what you need to know right when you need it.
So that's the idea, it's the predictive power of Now. It's the idea that your data is being collected at all times. You have an understanding of the context, both social and environmental, and in their case that means so they can sell you crap.
Yeah.
What we want to do is use that kind of same technology to help you change your health behaviours. So an example we've got here, and I won't play you the whole video because it wouldn't be very exciting. Oh no, okay, you can't see it. Let me skip to the next one. So essentially what that was is that's a video of me cycling through Headingley, and what I was going to ask you to do is tell me when I'm in danger. But the reason that's interesting, so essentially what we've got is an app connected to a wearable device, and the wearable device can provide alerts, so it can buzz and vibrate and tell you when you're at risk. Now, the cool thing is, for the whole of West Yorkshire, we know when people are at risk. So, one of the things that's interesting is that Leeds can feel really unsafe, but relative to places like Bradford and Keighley, Leeds is actually a relatively safe place to ride, albeit it's twice as dangerous as the national average. But more importantly, we know where the hotspots for bike crashes are in Leeds. So those of you who cycle kind of down through Headingley into Leeds will kind of recognise this junction here is the one by the church where people just pull out when you're going at a nice speed and the traffic's just going to go on. And this here is that turning outside. Is it the old oak or the original oak? Yeah. So there's two places, and what we can do is we can buzz people when they're in danger, because what it looks like is in certain environments people aren't able to perceive where it's risky, but most of the time people feel like they're at risk when they're not. And so what we want to do is create an app which lets people know that they're safe, but also lets them know when they need to pay particular attention. So I hope it's been useful for you. I hope I've given you a sense of kind of a little bit of background on the science of behaviour change and how we can apply that using mobile sensing. I think the key thing I wanted to point out to you is that with a little bit of chat to a few people and some ideas and a little bit of playing around with some middleware, this is stuff that you can prototype really, really easy. You don't have to be a coder to do any of this. I'm certainly not a coder. You have to be able to pull together ideas. And what they encourage you to do is have a think about how you might do that, how you might make use of mobile sensing, and there's some boring references that aren't very interesting. And if you want to talk to me about it some more, I'm very happy to discuss it with you. Thank you very much.